You're listening to The Nonprofit Boost, where Double the Donation and industry leaders share practical tips to help you grow revenue and boost corporate fundraising at your nonprofit.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode of The Nonprofit Boost, hosted by Double the Donation. I am so excited to have everybody here and have Benjamin Dolair here as well from Canvas Cloud. I've got a quick intro. So Benjamin is the CEO and co-founder of Canvas Cloud, a technology and business consulting firm built on, we've got honesty, transparency, and really a genuine focus on people as much as product. He's got deep expertise in business technology and process. Ben is also really passionate for advocating for the nonprofit community as a whole. He is passionate when it comes to helping organizations use tech to change the world, one community at a time. I love that. It is a pleasure to have you here, Ben.
Thanks for having me here, Amelia. And also thank you for the work that you do with Double the Donation. I also understand that Double the Donation's on its 14th year, which is a pretty great milestone.
Yeah, it's an awesome milestone. Thanks for calling that one out. We're really excited about the work we're doing when it comes to workplace fundraising, not just matching gifts. We're moving into corporate volunteering, payroll giving. How can we help you activate your existing donors and your existing supporters to become real champions for your cause? So excited to have speakers like you on and really dive into what's next and how we can keep up with the changing trends in nonprofit tech. Which brings me to my first question for you, Ben. You've spent 25 years in tech and consulting, both with business and nonprofits. And I was curious what drew you specifically toward helping nonprofits succeed with their tech and their processes.
Well, so for me, it actually started quite a while ago. It really started with a conversation with my son, who was about 8 years old at the time. And this might have been a decade or so ago now. I recognize while I was talking with him that I anticipated and thought the world would be different from when I was a kid to when I became an adult. And he was now at the age where I started to make some of those thoughts. And if I really wanted to see some of that change happen, things had to change. Just how I operated, what things I focused on, things that I did, companies I worked with, all of that had to change. And at the time I was in a consulting role. I was working with a lot of mid-market and some small enterprise companies, and it just started working with some human resource or human services nonprofits. And through all that, there was this culmination of events that really made me realize the way we function as a society, the way that we treat each other, the way that we react to each other. None of that was going to be dictated by an MBA sitting in a corner office on spreadsheets. Real and lasting change starts with nonprofits and specifically with their people. As I sort of developed this thought and kept going with it, I also came to the realization that when technology is done right, it really gives people time back. Actually, both in commercial and in the nonprofit space. Now, the thing I was seeing was in the commercial space, time back usually meant time for them to generate more profits. Nonprofits, on the other hand, it was vastly different. It was more about, well, how do I use this time to give back? How do I use this time to serve? How do I use this time to create more impact? And it made me realize that while I was working with nonprofits, every data point that I was looking at, everything that we saw really came from a human story behind the scenes. It was, a child being fed, a family being housed, a community being supported. All of that really motivated me when I realized that's the change that we need to see. Nonprofits really are the heart of all of our communities. When you can give them better tools, smarter systems, it's not just about making their operations better. It's really about multiplying the effect and the impact that they have in their community. And that's what drew me into that industry.
Absolutely. It's always mission impact. And I love the way that you put, that extra time is mission expansion, which is really just another warm coat or warm meal for a family in need. So I love that. And I want to pivot a little bit when it comes to thinking about the tech side of things, because I think on the for-profit side, they've got all of these technological systems for team enablement and profit maximization. But when it comes to nonprofits, you often talk about the right tool for the job. So I was curious to hear what sort of mistakes, over engineering do nonprofits fall into when choosing systems, and maybe even under engineering, where they don't have the systems yet to support that incredible mission we were talking about earlier.
I really think there's at least a couple of traps that seem to be the ones that nonprofits fall into. The first one being rushing into a solution without really considering the roadmap of what their organization is going to be doing in the future. Normally, this sort of manifests itself with grabbing every free tool they can possibly get their hands on, right? And that seems really innocuous at the time because they're looking for that fix that pain point right now. But that unintentionally starts to take them down this path of being really inefficient and starts to evolve into this discontent around what they have. And they quickly find out that tool really serves more of that point in time need, and it's not going to serve their evolving needs. And really, it requires them to take a step back and find another tool that meets now their new requirements as those requirements change. And this becomes a repeating process. Right, it becomes a cycle of frustration, and especially with staff and even with leadership, on replacing tool after tool because it's just not doing what you want it to do as you evolve and change. Yeah. The second one to that, the second trap I see a lot is, okay, if we're not going to rush into something, let's just do it all. If we're going to do it, let's do it all, rip that Band-Aid off. That seems great until the amount of effort and the amount of stress that comes with it, especially when it comes to staff. Putting new technology in place that's more than just that point in time need. It's really exciting, but you have to pace yourself. Yeah. You really should plan that out, map it out, incrementally decide how you're going to use this piece of technology over time that can solve multiple needs, not just what it's going to do today, but where does it fit in down the road? 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. Start with some clarity. Don't start with complexity. Don't throw everything in the kitchen sink at it all at once. Build your way up to that as your organization needs it and requires it. I probably could speak for some staff members I know I've run across over time. If they're not saying it out loud, they will appreciate the fact that you take this staged approach to a new technology. And as you add your technology stack and your selection process versus trying to do it all at once, they're really trying to serve your mission and do what they do best. Putting a technology load on top of that is not what they're built for. Let them work on their mission for you and slowly add new technology to make it easier for them to achieve your mission.
I love that answer. I heard a lot of scalability, team enablement. Make sure you're on the same page when it comes to choosing a system that you're going to be able to keep and scale over time instead of grabbing what's free or just jumping all into every feature available. So right. I love that balanced approach. I do want to pivot a little bit since Double the Donation, our focus is basically on workplace fundraising. It's on matching gifts. It's on how can we help you see more revenue from the corporations that offer these generous programs, and how do we close what we call a real donor awareness gap when it comes to matching gift funding, whether that's, making sure you're submitting requests, and also on the volunteer side, a lot of volunteer time off opportunities are out there and people just have no idea. And so when you're thinking through the sort of systems and data capture systems available, a lot of times nonprofits don't have that infrastructure ready to go. So I did want to turn it over to you, Ben, when it comes to your experience implementing tech for nonprofits. I wanted to know, how often do you see organizations missing out on corporate giving, whether that's, again, matching gifts, volunteer grants, in-kind support, just because they don't have the data or the systems available or set up the right way to support that?
Too often, Amelia. Too often. It seems to be the afterthought for a lot of nonprofits because they might be either focused on large donations, major gifts, or just focused on volunteering piece, not realizing that there's this other avenue that they could be pursuing when it comes to workplace giving. Mm-hmm. I can say that there's, when you start thinking about that approach, if that's something they're starting to get into, how do we add corporate giving? How do we add workplace giving, whether that's matching gifts or volunteering? How do we add that to what we want to do already? And how do we add that into our plan? Mm-hmm. You really can't you really can't maximize that opportunity, matching gifts and corporate giving, if the processes you have in place are discombobulated, right? If they aren't functioning well, if you don't have a solid playbook for how you're going to handle those, or if your data is an absolute mess, or maybe even worse, your data lives in a bunch of different systems that don't talk to each other. Being able to capture that information and tie all those relationship pieces together requires you to have some organization to be able to get down that path. All of those other things, when we talk about bad processes, potentially bad data that's disparate and living in other systems, those are all going to become hidden opportunity costs for you. Things that you're missing out on that could be adding value and donations to your organization to drive more impact for the communities you serve if you can solve those problems now.
Absolutely. I know it's like the data silo death trap that so many
Yes.
people find themselves in, where it's exactly hidden opportunity costs everywhere and everywhere down the line. So having your systems set up in such a way that you can capture every donor data piece you need to capture. And of course, one of those donor data pieces being, where do they work? And what does that program kind of offer to support their already, maybe it's a substantial giving history, perhaps that could be a maximized giving history moving forward with employment data help. So excellent there. I did want to ask too, if there are any essential data configurations every nonprofit should kind of think about when we want to take workplace giving a little bit more seriously. So you mentioned not having siloed data. You mentioned having very comprehensive systems that talk to each other and update automatically, so there's no missing or outdated information. Anything else on that side that you feel like we're missing?
Well, it probably shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that's tuning into this, but relationships matter. And workplace giving really isn't any different, as you've alluded to. I would say, first and foremost, you need to make sure that you have a robust relational system to support what you're going to be trying to do. Something like Salesforce, for example, something that can handle and organize all the information and all the data that you're now going to be handling and capturing. That old adage, garbage in, garbage out, that still applies. That hasn't changed. With workplace giving, you're tracking new things that you might not otherwise be tracking. And you've already started to mention some of those. You're going to be tracking employers. You're tracking employer contacts. You're going to be tracking not only your existing donors, but now new donors that might be employees of these employers. Not besides those, you're going to start looking at the relationships between those individuals. Are they tied to other donors that are outside of your workplace giving? Are they tied to other employees within workplace giving that you now want to leverage and communicate with? That leads you into a communication plan around both the donors and the employers that you're communicating with. Do you know if the donors you have in your existing donor database, are they part of a matching gift program from their employer? Cross-referencing everything that you have for donors with a tool, a platform like Double the Donation, gives you that visibility into new potential opportunities with those donors. Or provides you with a new avenue, a new channel of communication to open the door to them with on other options around donations, whether that's monetary or otherwise. And then lastly, I think if you have the resources to do so, do some of the heavy lifting. Make this as frictionless as possible, especially when it comes to individual donors and then some of the employers you're working with. That goes a long way. If you are an organization that has a mission that resonates and you're easy to work with, they will want to continue to work with you. Make it simple. And most importantly, in every communication you have with them, make sure that you're showcasing your impact. And if you can, showcase the impact that organization has helped drive, because that's something that will resonate both with the employers in the corporate giving programs and the employees that are donating. Because that's what they want to see. What are you able to do with what we're doing, especially if my company is now contributing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the way you put that. At Double the Donation, we call that like the win-win-win when it comes to, there's the nonprofit win, which is probably the most obvious win of more funds and support. But there's also the employee win, where they get to support you in as many ways as they possibly can through their employer, whether that's through doubling their donation or asking for a volunteer grant. And then there's also the win that comes from the corporate side, which a lot of times that one's forgotten And that's the win of, enhanced reputation. They get to come across as a leader in giving and making sure that their communities are supported, right? And there's so much data and research around specifically customers wanting to buy from corporations that support the causes that they care about.
Yeah.
And employees wanting to work for companies that do, again, support the causes that they care about. And then there's all these other considerations too, because a lot of the time, if you're a corporation and you're not sort of being a part of this movement when it comes to social good, your competitors are. So it's a real, I guess, point of comparison across all of those different fields. So I love the way that you put that. And the relational aspect of it too. Data is just an entry point for how to understand stewardship and stewarding the relationships with your donors and with those corporations. So I did want to ask you too, I think you might have already touched on this, but when we're thinking about the KPIs that matter, we talked a little bit about quantitative data, qualitative data. Are there any other data points that you're like, these are the ones that nonprofits should continue to track? We talked a little bit about employment data as well, but anything you feel like we're missing there?
Did we raise enough funds through this program for it to meet our goals? That's probably the most obvious metric and KPI that a nonprofit want to track. But there's, I feel like that's just at the surface level, right? That's the top level. Is this worth us pursuing and continuing? But there's a lot of other things that feed into that are probably almost as important, I would argue. One of them is donor retention rate. And not just are they continuing to donate, but are they continuing to do other variants of donations for us? Maybe you have an in-kind program. Maybe you have volunteering as well. Are they expanding beyond? Are they really connecting with your mission and going beyond what they're already doing from a corporate giving standpoint? If you start to see them filter in further, you know you're connecting with them at the personal level, and they're going to continue to support you, and you can steward that relationship. Besides the individuals, there might be other opportunities from a corporate sponsorship standpoint. We work with a lot of nonprofits that host galas. And if you're getting into these workplace giving programs, if that workplace really sees value in what they're doing for you and their employees see value and appreciate the fact that they have you as a nonprofit that they can donate to, they might start reaching out with other options. They might want to sponsor a table at a gala. They might want to host a group volunteering event and get their employees involved in your organization in another manner. That would also be another good indicator from a metric on, are they doing more than just what we're asking? Are they going beyond what we're just asking them to do? And I think lastly, coming back to that communication plan, as you're sending out information, as you're sending out details around the impact you're having and sending it to both employers and employees within giving, are there calls to action? Are there things that you want them to look at or do or read more about? Are they engaging with you? If you see that they are, you know that your process and your plan is being effective. Even if none of the other pieces are true, you've got them in an engaged manner, which can lead you down the path of all the other options, whether that be in-kind or volunteering opportunities.
Data is so important.
Coming from someone who's been in technology for so long, data is very important.
It really, really does. It helps you structure communications, which is just the cornerstone of relationship building. So I appreciate your insights there. A question too that I think comes up a lot. We've seen a lot of nonprofits struggle when it comes to updating their infrastructure. There's growing pains sometimes to try to figure out a new system that works well, or maybe they've just launched a new arm of their mission and they want to find a better system, or they want to find better features within their existing system. So I wanted to ask you, what are the best practices that you would recommend for any organization looking to perhaps change or enhance their current tech stack?
A couple of traps that we talked about earlier, that I mentioned earlier, those two fall to the top of the list, right? They're there.
Right.
Plan ahead and be patient. Pace yourself. It really is too easy to think I can just rip this out and replace it quick and we're going to keep moving on. And then that's just not specific to nonprofits. That seems to be everywhere in the technology space. There's a lot of promise on I can do this quickly. That's not always the case. You should really be thinking it through. So really slow it down, think it through. What is it about your current technology stack that you have that does work? That's just as important as what am I missing? What doesn't work? Because if you're going to start looking at augmenting or replacing, you should really have a plan for what are the things that we really need to do? What works really well and we don't want to touch? Or what is it we're missing that we need to replace? Or is there a system that does both of those? Can the new system I'm looking at or systems take what we were doing and amplify it and make us be better at it and allow us to do it better or more or faster, whatever the case may be. But taking all that into consideration against, and I know we live in turbulent times, where are we going to be in the next year? Where are we going to be in 2 years? What does that start to look like? What are we really projecting? Because if you're going to take the time to enhance or replace part of your technology stack, what is it going to do for me in the future as well? Try to work your way out of that immediate need point in time replacement. How is this going to serve my needs as we move forward? Sometimes that might be difficult. That might not be your thing. That might be really hard to think that far ahead and really understand, well, what are we really going to need from a technology standpoint in 2 years? And that's okay. Lean into your staff, lean into your board. If you have to, hire someone else, pull a consultant in. I mean, there's lots of nonprofit consultants that are independent. There's lots of advisors out there that can really help you formulate what that roadmap could look like based on what your organization does and what you have for needs. And then sort of peek around the corner as to what do I think will happen and where do I think we'll go, so that technology needs, you're not going to outgrow them too quickly and you'll be able to use them as you continue to grow.
Long-term strategy.
Long-term strategy.
Yeah. When you're in the weeds and you're in the thick of it, you think everything needs to change tomorrow. So
I think that happens to all of us. That's not exclusive to just the nonprofits.
No, it happens to the best of us, especially when I guess your cause is, I mean, your life, and you're so dedicated and committed to it. Of course, you're going to want to see instant change. So I appreciate your perspective on that.
Sure.
Last couple of questions I did want to get your thoughts on when it comes to, talked a little bit about corporate relationship building and corporate support. And I think the most common one is cash funding when you think about corporate support and matching gifts. But we've actually found that volunteer partnerships are really powerful too, especially in the realm of volunteer time off, filling some daytime shifts, and also volunteer grants, where a lot of even nonprofits don't know that a corporation will pay their cause for the number of hours that an employee volunteers with them. So I wanted to hear from your vantage point, if there are any main blockers that you've seen nonprofits run into when it comes to soliciting and tracking in kind and volunteer-based, specifically corporate support.
Well, from the technology standpoint, I think that sort of rolls into some of the conversation that we've been having throughout the duration of this podcast, which is not trying to shoehorn a requirement into a system that wasn't built for it. Right. This comes back to some of the technology stack conversations. When you start thinking about in-kind donations and volunteering as part of your overall vision, you really have to make sure that you have a plan and a system that can not only structurally support that, but can also be easily managed by those teams, your donor development team, your volunteer management team, so that they can actually execute those initiatives versus just it becoming a wish. That doesn't necessarily mean that all things have to live in the same system, although that's an ideal scenario. But it does mean that those systems should probably be talking to each other so that you have visibility across the board when you start looking at your constituents, your stakeholders.
Absolutely. And making sure that the systems that you have in place, you mentioned they talk to each other, but they're also automated if possible. So it's not something that, you're using a ton of staff time to dig into those opportunities. And that's what I love about our system is it's kind of a set it and forget it. Something you can log into and look at and kind of measure the health of once or twice a year and go from there. So, yeah. Well, I think I've got a couple of wrapping up questions I would love to get your thoughts on.
Sure.
And I am probably going to end it with, I think, the favorite question that I have personally, which was, say a nonprofit receives a $10 million donation. What would you recommend they do first from a technology perspective, and why?
Oh, well, that does seem to be showing up in the news a little more often, doesn't it? These these large major gift donations. I think when a major gift like that comes in, it's not just a financial milestone for a nonprofit. It's really a signal that your organization has reached a new level of impact, right? That we're talking about a significant value in what you're able to do. And in that moment, you really need your technology to rise up and meet you and support you so that you can create the impact that you're looking to create. In conversations I've had with other nonprofit leaders, one of the things that we look at when there's, whether it's replacing a chunk of their technology stack and trying to simplify some of their process, or running into a scenario where they've received a large grant and now they're able to do so much more. One of the things we look at telling them is, make sure you're focusing on what you're trying to do now and for the future, that strategic vision, and then make sure you've got a tool that you can't outgrow. Because if you're going to go through all these growing pains and swapping out pieces of your technology stack, especially when it's going to be a larger piece, how about we don't do it twice? Let's find something that you can stick with and continue to grow into. And that's why we as a Salesforce partner have leaned so heavily into Salesforce, even when it comes to nonprofits. That platform has a lot of flexibility. It can do a lot of things. It scales well. It integrates to thousands of other tools. It really gives you visibility across all of the platforms. And it's really a great core system, but I think its real magic starts to show when everything around it starts to work in harmony, when it really starts to flow. And leveraging another tool like Double the Donation, integrating that all together. So you have this single pane of glass, a single visibility into what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve, so that all this information can flow in one spot and you can really start to look at it all holistically.
Absolutely.
You don't have to go that alone, though. There's plenty of options out there. We're, as a consulting partner, we understand technology and understand nonprofits. Someone like us can really help you evaluate what are your current tools, what are the gaps that you have, and really help design what that tech stack starts to look like and what can be moved around, what could be replaced, what could be added. And once you have a foundation for all those pieces, really you can start getting everything to work together. Everything starts operating smoothly. You start getting that single pane of glass, as I mentioned, from a visibility standpoint. And it really starts to become much easier to look at capturing gifts, donors, volunteers, in-kind donations, and really start to understand and put together that whole picture on what is the overall impact that you're making and how does that translate then into the people that you serve.
Absolutely. I love that answer. That was so holistic. And the fact that before you even think about changing your tech stack, if you were to receive a $10 million donation, considering what that means for your mission and what you've accomplished, that's a huge accomplishment.
Huge.
So just sitting in that and knowing that, and then asking, okay, well, what's next? So
right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I had the best time interviewing and chatting with you today. Really, really appreciate you sharing your insights when it comes to nonprofit tech and infrastructure and systems, but most of all, relationship building with your constituents, with your volunteers, and how we can make that stronger. And just appreciate you coming on today, Ben. So that is the end of today's episode. I really, really appreciate everybody tuning in, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you from the Nonprofit Boost team, and we'll talk later.
Here's your next steps. Visit doublethedonation.com to explore the tools and strategies that schools and nonprofits use to unlock more revenue through corporate fundraising. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe and share the video with your team and peers.